Welcome to Healthwatch, presented by Novant Health. I'm your host, June Baker. Our show features local physicians and health professionals discussing health topics of importance to local residents. Today we will welcome Dr. Candaceeben, who recently joined Novant Health Family and Internal Medicine, South Brunswick. Then physician assistants Hilary and Adam Thompson of Novant Health Seaside Family Medicine will join us to share some tips for beating the cold and flu this year. And we'll get to meet Deborah Lannon, who has joined Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center as a chaplain. Finally, Novant Health dietitian Kris Ratley will join us to share tips for healthy eating during the holiday season. Stay tuned to learn about valuable health topics with Healthwatch. Our first guest today is Dr. Candaceeben of Novant Health Family and Internal Medicine, South Brunswick. Welcome to the show today, Dr. Sieben. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, June, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're quite welcome. We're really happy to have you in Brunswick County, and I know that we're very happy to have you at Novant Health Family and Internal Medicine offices in Carolina Shores. So I'd like to start by getting to know you a little bit better and have our viewers get acquainted with you. So tell me a little bit about your education.
My undergraduate education, I'm originally from Illinois, and so my undergrad was at the University of Illinois, and actually I started in business.
Really?
So my undergraduate degree was in finance, and I worked in business for about 15 years. I went back and got a master's of business at Illinois, and worked in electronic publishing and information systems, it was a lot of fun. I have to say I really enjoyed it, but you just come to a place in life where you want to do something more, and I was very fortunate. At the time I was living in Dayton, and Wright State University has a medical school that's very interested in fostering primary care. Mm-hmm. And they have found that people who kind of come back tend to like primary care, and offered me the opportunity to go to medical school, and I jumped. It was wonderful.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
Wow. And so how about your work experience? We now know you were in business. Mm-hmm. Let's hear about some of your work experience.
Well, actually, you know, my last position, I was in electronic publishing, building databases for LexisNexis, and I was building the Nexus databases. And it's kind of interesting. One of my last jobs for them, I took a trip to the Philippines. Uh-huh. We had suppliers we worked with there, and I was there when they had the coup in the Philippines. Yes. And spent 5 days in a hotel being bombed. And
oh my goodness.
But it was kind of a life-changing experience. It really makes you think about, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And that's really started me thinking about other avenues, and I thought medicine was just such a good way to go. You can really contribute to the community and have an involvement that you can't in business.
Wow, so that's an amazing story.
It was fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, what brought you to Brunswick County?
I have family in the area, and
nice.
It's just so pretty. When I come down here, it's mm-hmm. beautiful. It's a nice climate. I'm coming from Ohio, where we have winters. I won't miss those. Yeah, and I think this area gives people a chance to have a healthier lifestyle as well, because you can do more outdoors and be active.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the sunshine helps. It's.
I have to say, it's been nice. It's been nice since I came in July. It's been nice.
Well, that leads to another question. When did you join the group?
I came July this year.
Mm-hmm. And how are you liking it so far?
I love it, and I was practicing medicine for, almost 20 years in Ohio. So it's a big change to come down, but it's very nice because we have a group that's growing. Mm-hmm. We've got two other new physicians there. Mm-hmm. We've got a wonderful staff. It's just been such a pleasure to work with everybody there, and then the communities around us. I was kind of surprised how much need there is for
Right.
care down here, and we've been busy, and it's been fun.
Well, I know you're board certified in family medicine, but some of our viewers may not be as familiar with that as others. So tell us a little bit about what that means.
So in family medicine, our training involves taking care of an entire family. So we have training in pediatrics. We spend time in training like in newborn nurseries, working in the pediatric hospitals, working with pediatric practices, and then lots of time with adult medicine as well, and with women's health. So we're able to take care of all phases of life.
And I think that's important to get to know that whole family, the dynamics that go on.
It's always interesting what people will, they won't tell you much about themselves, but they're happy to
tell you about
to tattle on. they're happy to do
Oh,
that.
that's funny. Well, you mentioned you have some partners at the clinic.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about your partners.
George Bell is an internal medicine specialist, and he's
been on our show.
Yes, and he's been here for, I think, 4 or 5 months. He joined. Great guy to work with, very knowledgeable, has
Great sense of humor.
Yeah, he does have. It's wonderful to have him there, and he's got lots of medical experience as well. So it's really nice to have that when, it's nice to have somebody to curbside when you've got a question. So.
Absolutely. And then you have Stephanie.
Right, Dr. Connell is also family practice like I am, so it's nice so that we have that chance to build pediatric practices and provide women's care that may not be available otherwise.
How young do you take patients?
We take all ages.
All ages.
So, yeah.
Do you start at like 2 years old?
I think right now we have 2 and up, but our goal is to be able to take care of every age.
That's great. That's good to know. Well, for our viewers out there who may not be familiar with the new Novant Health South Brunswick Medical Plaza, where your group is located, tell us a little bit about the services offered at the Medical Plaza.
You know what, it's really nice, and it's one of the reasons I was so excited to come to Novant down here. I think that the Novant system, they've done a really good job of trying to provide services that people need in the local area. And so we have radiology there. They can do x-ray and some ultrasound imaging. We have the ability to do mammograms and MRIs at the facility. There are subspecialists that come out to work with us. We have surgeons, gynecologists, urologists. It's been really nice to have all of that available in our facility.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think it was a much needed service in that area, so it's very convenient, and I know the folks are loving it. So before we wrap up though, how about telling our viewers how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to make an appointment?
So the phone number at the clinic is 579-8363.
That's great. I'm sure there are folks out there who would love to call and speak with you and learn how to become one of your patients. So
that would be great.
Thank you so much for coming today. It's been a
Thanks,
pleasure to have you, and we're happy to have you at Novant Health and in Brunswick County.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now we'll welcome physician assistants Hilary and Adam Thompson. Welcome to the show today, guys. Well, actually, welcome back, because you have been here before.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here again. And I'd like to start off by reintroducing you to our viewers and telling them a little bit about your education and your background. So how about let's start with you.
Sure. We actually met in PA school at Pennsylvania College of Technology.
Really?
Yes. And so
I think I forgot that.
We've both been practicing family medicine here in Brunswick County for a little over 8 years now.
Wow, time went by fast.
It did.
I can't believe you guys have been here 8 years already. Yeah. So you both went to the same school? Yeah. So how long have you been in Brunswick County?
In total, well, we've been, like I said, we've been practicing here together for about 8 years, but I guess we've been here, what, about 10 years?
10 years.
Yep.
Wow. That's great. Now, Adam, you're both certified physician assistants, is that correct? So can you explain a little bit to our viewers about what that kind of means?
PAs, yeah, they're healthcare professionals. They're licensed in all 50 states. We can practice. We treat acute and chronic illnesses, write prescriptions, order and interpret tests. Pretty much can do anything a physician can do. We just work under the supervision of a physician.
Okay. And I understand that you guys treat patients of all ages. Is that correct?
Yes, we see newborns all the way up through seniors.
Oh, so you do start at newborns. That's great. Well, it's kind of nice to have the whole family, huh? You probably learn as much from the family member as you do your patient then.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's what Dr. Sieben was telling us, that they tattle on one another.
Yes, they do.
Well, let's talk about the services that you offer at Novant Health Seaside Family Medicine. Adam, do you want to tell me about that?
Yeah. Like you say, we offer pretty comprehensive family care, really. We treat, like I said, acute and chronic illnesses. We treat certain minor injuries, sprains, lacerations. We do all kinds of physicals, sports physicals, wellness physicals, things like that. We've got an on-site lab.
Oh, great.
So we can do blood work right there. We've got same-day appointments available for certain acute things. Hilary does a lot of women's health things, you know, like well women's exams, pap smears, things like that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. With colder weather upon us, I know many of us are preparing for cold and flu season. So do you have any tips for preventing it?
Best thing is to get your flu shot every year. That's the best thing you can do to prevent the flu. CDC recommends anybody 6 months or older gets a flu shot, and especially if you're have some chronic illnesses or immune system is a little bit decreased, then we especially recommend it. Generally, you know, as far as preventing cold or flu, typical things, you know, hand washing, sanitizing, common things like your phone, keyboard, things like that. You know, obviously avoid anybody that you know has the flu or is sick.
Like the plague.
Yeah. Don't eat or drink after anyone. Kind of basic stuff like that is the best thing you can do.
Yeah. Have you seen much flu already?
Not yet. Knock on wood.
Starting to see more colds.
Yeah. If somebody does have symptoms, what do you recommend?
Usually, if they're otherwise healthy, most people can fight off the cold or flu in 7 to 10 days. Usually we just do symptomatic treatment. Now again, if you've got chronic illnesses or your immune system isn't up to par, those folks are more likely to develop complications, require hospitalizations from pneumonia, certain complications that can occur. So they may want to seek treatment a little sooner, but in general it's good for anybody to get checked. You know, there's antiviral medicines that we can use, like Tamiflu, for people that have the flu.
Well, that's a good question, or that brings up a good question. How do I tell the difference between a cold and the flu? Because oftentimes I get it and I think, oh, I just have a cold, and it turns out it is flu, or vice versa. So
it's tough. Clinically,
Great.
Yeah.
Great news.
I mean, a lot of the symptoms overlap, you know, the sore throat, runny nose, cough, stuffy, not feeling great, fevers and chills. Typically the flu, you're going to get more profound fatigue, just feeling completely run down, muscle aches, joint aches. People say they've felt like they've been hit by a truck, typically, things like that. But there's a lot of overlap. We've got the ability that we can do a flu swab in the office. It's a nasal swab that we can get the results right there if there's some question. But there is a lot of overlap. Typically the flu is a lot worse. It's kind of like the common cold on steroids. It's an easy way to think of it.
That's a great description.
Yeah.
And I have felt before like I've been run over by a truck, so I know what you're saying. Hilary, I understand that you also have a particular interest in skincare?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I actually used to work in dermatology for a couple years prior to working in family practice, so I actually do some dermatology, you know, in practice.
Oh, okay.
But as far as I can offer some good winter time skincare tips, one of the best things I tell people is you're better off using a body wash as opposed to a bar soap. Bar soaps are really irritating and drying to the skin. You also want to get in the habit of moisturizing your skin, and actually the best time to do that is within 3 minutes after bathing. And one of the best moisturizers, actually, believe it or not, is Vaseline. Regular old Vaseline.
It's so greasy.
It is, but if you put it on right away after bathing, your skin will absorb it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try that. I didn't know that. That's really helpful. So before we wrap up, how about telling our viewers how they can contact you and make an appointment with either of you?
Sure, they can just call the office and speak with one of our staff. The number is 910-575-3923, or they can schedule online through MyChart.
Oh, yes, that's right. You guys are on MyChart.
Yeah.
Forgot to say that. That's a great tool. I love MyChart. I'm on it, and I think it's great. So, well, thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure to see you again.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've been here. So I look forward to having you back real soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great. Next, we will meet Deborah Lannon, a new chaplain at Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. It's great to be here today.
It is such a pleasure to have you on the show. And I understand that you recently joined Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center as the hospital's first full-time chaplain.
That's right.
That is so exciting, and I know it's exciting at the hospital. So tell me a little bit about where you are, where you're from, and your work before you became the hospital chaplain.
I'm from the Carolinas.
Are you really?
Yes. I was born and raised around here. I graduated from high school in Greensboro. But I've only recently returned back to the area. I spent most of my adult life in Canada, which is where I worked in congregations. For the last 25 years, I've served in congregations,
churches
across Canada, yes.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. And I think you recently completed some additional education, is that correct?
That's right. I finished a year's residency at New Hanover. They have a program for chaplain residents that covers a year. So every year they have 10 residents, and I
didn't know that.
Fortunate enough to be one of the ones last year.
Awesome. So that prepares you to be in the hospital setting, is that right?
We do clinical and education pieces.
Well, why were you interested in becoming a hospital chaplain?
Well, I took a break when I moved back down here from congregational ministry. And I decided I missed it, but I was clear I didn't want to go back into the congregation. And I'd done some work in hospitals as a local clergy, and so I started to pursue that and fell in love with it.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about that chaplaincy residency program. I'm interested in that. What does that consist of?
We do units of what's called clinical pastoral education, which is an accredited program through the Department of Education, which involves 300 hours minimum of patient contact and 100 hours of education in the classroom. So we work as a full-time chaplain in the hospital while we're doing all of that. So we do 3 units while we're doing our residency.
Yeah. Well, now that you've joined Novant Health, share a little bit about your role and the chaplaincy program there at the hospital.
We are still figuring out my role. It's a new position.
Yeah, it's very new.
So we're working at it as we go along. I'm working in conjunction with the volunteer chaplains that are there and have been there for quite a while. It looks like a lot of my role will be dealing with and working with staff support, as well as doing some direct patient care and working with the ethics committee.
Oh,
So,
that's interesting.
yeah.
Well, we've met Fran Pelletier before, and she's been a guest on our show, and I know there's several volunteer chaplains. Tell us a little bit more about the volunteer chaplaincy program.
That is what has kept the spiritual care program alive at Brunswick for the last, I think, at least 15 years. There are 18 volunteer chaplains that have given time and energy and commitment.
I know, I see them every day.
There are people who come in and round on every room, Monday through Friday. And somebody always has a pager so that if there's an emergency, it can be answered and responded to.
Yes, they've done a wonderful job. I can't say enough about our volunteer chaplains.
They are amazing.
They are amazing people and are so unselfish and so giving of their time. So that's been really great. What type of situations do you or one of the hospital volunteer chaplains find yourself being called in for?
People think mostly we deal with death, and we do get called in for deaths.
Sure.
But we also get called in if a patient's had a hard diagnosis and they're having a hard time dealing with it, or if the family's having a hard time making end-of-life decisions.
Yeah, that's about it.
Or if they're just having a hard time with the next step, if they're losing their independence and having to go to a rehab facility or an assisted living facility when they've been living on their own. So it could be anything, but those are the major ones we deal with.
How about good times? How about when a baby's born?
They don't call us, but I show up. That was one of the floors I covered in New Hanover, so I'm partial to new babies.
Well, if someone's in the hospital and they would like the services of a chaplain, how does that work? How do you make that happen?
First, they need to tell the nurse, and then the nurse has the contact numbers of who to phone and how to get a hold of us. And so that's the best way to do it. Just let somebody on the nursing staff know.
What if it's in the middle of the night?
We have someone with a pager that answers calls in the middle of the night. So that's for emergency calls. If it can wait till the morning, then we do it in the morning. But if it's an emergency, it's answered during the middle of the night.
Wow, that's a big job.
It is.
Now I understand there's also a chapel. Tell me about that.
It's a beautiful little space in the hospital that I don't think many people know about.
Probably not.
It's quiet. There's space for people to come and sit, a place for them to put prayers in a book.
Oh, nice.
So that chaplains can offer prayers for their requests. Weekly. It happens sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, so they write their prayers there. It's just a quiet space for people to come and be present in the ways that they need to be present to the Holy One in those moments of their life.
Is that open to the staff also?
Absolutely.
So anyone who needs that space,
anyone who needs it, and it's open 24 hours a day.
That's great. That's great. Well, before we close, is there any other information that you'd like to share with our viewers about the chaplaincy program?
I'd like to say something about chaplaincy because most people don't really know what we do.
Sure.
One of the chaplains I heard speak recently said, the medical staff deals with what the illness means. They're treating the illness. As chaplains, they deal with what it is. We deal with what it means. So those questions that come up when you're lying in a hospital bed, that's what we work with. And so don't hesitate to phone because it isn't related to a faith tradition. Doesn't matter what faith tradition or no faith tradition at all. We work with anybody who wants to see us. So where you go to church is not a prerequisite. It's not a prerequisite that you go to church. So feel free to call and have somebody come and visit and talk with you about what's taking up space in your brain at the moment.
You got a couple hours? I want to call you.
Sure.
Well, great. Well, we're really happy to have you here in our community and at our hospital. You've been a pleasure to have on the show, and I'm sure you're going to be very busy.
Yes, already, but thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Now, Novant Health Brunswick Medical Center dietitian Kris Ratley will join us to share some tips for healthier eating during the holidays. Kris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. I want to start by learning a little bit more about you. Tell me what you do at the hospital. What is your role?
My role at the hospital is the clinical nutrition manager. So my staff and I, we go to the patients and try to identify patients that might be at nutrition risk or patients that are already malnourished and work with the rest of the team on trying to figure out how to help those patients, assist them maybe with food sources that they can get at home or throughout the community. And then we also do nutrition counseling, so we might educate the patient on their diet, or we might educate them on vitamin or minerals that they're taking at home. And so we're just trying to, or we work with the patients to, if they're not able to eat enough by mouth, then we work with the rest of the team to assist them in making sure they're getting adequate nutrition by other means.
Sure. That sounds like a big job.
It can be at times, but it's fun.
Tell me a little bit about your education and how you became a dietitian.
Well, my first degree is in exercise science, and so I was working a lot in corporate health and would have to contract a dietitian to do a lot of the nutrition programs. So after a couple of years of doing that, I became interested in nutrition. And I guess I wasn't interested at first because of all the chemistry that it required, and that wasn't a strong point of mine. But then I pursued the degree in nutrition, and so now I have worked in acute care or in the hospital setting. I work in corporate health, I've worked in oncology, I've worked in cardiac and pulmonary rehab, so there's a lot of different avenues that you can work in if you're a registered dietitian.
Wow, that's interesting. I just didn't realize all that. Well, we're about at the holiday time, which I always hate. I love holidays, but I eat too much. So I know lots of folks out there are thinking about having to deal with all the buffet lines and all the parties and what have you. Do you have any key recommendations for staying healthy and avoiding all those extra pounds that come along with all those parties and food?
I guess the 60 days of decadence starts from Halloween all the way through the new year.
Thanks for sharing that.
There is a long period of time. And I guess some tips I would suggest would be, one, don't go to a party hungry. Make sure that you eat beforehand, whether you eat a small meal or a salad or some fruit. But don't go
just take the edge off?
Right, just take the edge off. Say if it's Thanksgiving and it's going to be later in the afternoon, make sure that you eat breakfast. Don't wait till, you know, and say, oh, I won't eat breakfast because I'll eat extra calories. Well, you'll probably eat extra plus some. So to avoid that, then I would make sure that you go ahead and eat. The other thing I would say is that if you're at a buffet table or a line, maybe scan it first to see what's there and maybe make your best choices and say, well, this is something that I wouldn't normally have, so I'm going to spend my calories on this particular food that maybe is only here at a seasonal time.
That's a good idea about scanning it first, because if you don't do that and you start in the beginning and you say, well, I have a little this, a little that, and you end up with this huge plate of food.
You can, right. So another option could be to select a smaller plate if there's two sizes. To select a smaller plate, and then also to at the end maybe wait 10 minutes before going back, to give your time for to get the signal from your stomach to your brain that you are full and that you don't need it. And then the last tip I would give would probably be not to stand right by the buffet line, maybe to stand an arm length away so you're not tempted to hand to mouth and not really paying attention to what you're eating. But if the food's not right there, you're not as tempted to reach for it.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, are there certain foods that we should avoid at all costs?
I would say no, that there's no foods you should avoid. It's a special time of year, so again, I would try to choose foods that you may only have at that particular holiday instead of wasting calories on things that you might normally choose throughout your week that might be part of your regular meals.
Well, I'm a snacker. I love salty stuff and then the sweet stuff, and I go back and forth. I need salt and I need sweet. So when I go somewhere and there's just all these snacks, and it's so easy, and you think, well, it's not that heavy, it's a little Chex Mix or whatever. So are there any tips to help you deal with that, or is it mostly you need to eat before you go to that party?
I would try to eat before you go to the party. Maybe again, pick up some of the things that you want to try to sample. Maybe it's a Chex Mix that you don't normally make, so you want to try it. But then maybe take some mints with you and pop some mints in your mouth afterwards, so you're not tempted to keep snacking on those things where those calories can add up very quickly.
Well, great information. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our time is too short. I know we have a lot more to cover, but I know that this information is going to help me during the holidays. So
thank you.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to ATMC TV's Healthwatch. I hope this information was beneficial for you and your family. If you have any questions or topics that you would like to see discussed on a future show, please email them to atmctv@atmc.com. Thank you again for joining us today. Be sure to join us next time for Health Watch on ATMC TV.